It's really, really great to be here and to tell you about the story behind our innovations unit, which we've had up and running at Lancaster for about a year. Little warning really, this presentation is quite experimental. There are a number of things that can go and probably will go horribly wrong, but then again, that's part of the story of innovation. That's what we want to do. First off, what are these cardboard things? We're coming to that later, so if you can refrain from playing about with them and breaking them before we get there, then that will be pretty good. The story we're going to tell really splits into a number of different parts. We want to have a little bit of fun today, so we've got a few things in there where hopefully you can contribute and we can try and do stuff and it might go a bit wrong. That's to highlight what the innovation process is like. There's also the part of the story that explains, you know, what is the university doing with an innovation hub? How did we get there? How did we secure, you know, the buy-in from the business and all that kind of stuff? You could say that's the more boring bit of the presentation, and that's the bit that I've got. And then Rob, who leads the unit, is going to come and tell you some of the things we've been doing and some of the things that we've failed at as well. I think it's no coincidence that one of the reasons I was asked to kind of lead the innovation unit was that we were supposed to fail a lot. And we have. So one of the main things we found about innovation is that you need to do things very quickly. And in the spirit of that, I'd like all of you that are tweeting to, you've got 2 minutes to come up with an idea, hopefully fairly simple, probably web-based, and if you use the hashtag TaskTom and get tweeting, and the idea here is that Tom, he didn't like this idea, but he's going to try and build something that you've tweeted by the time we finish this presentation in 43 minutes time. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that, and then yes, you can carry on tweeting while we're doing the presentation, but you just remember that hashtag TaskTom, and hopefully if we get some good ideas he can actually go about producing them. If you see him running out of the door, that's because your ideas are too complicated or he's got overly stressed out. Okay, well if you remember that hashtag, write it down and start tweeting some simple ideas that you think might improve the student experience to that hashtag, and hopefully Tom can build them. Okay? Right. If no ideas come in, Tom, just give me some kind of signal and I can replay it again. Okay, so every story has its set of characters, and these are the characters in our story of innovation. So Paul Harness was director formerly at Manchester, and he'd done a lot of good stuff there, but he'd always had this vision for creating something that could kind of differentiate the IT department from other things, so something more than the kind of commodities that we're delivering. And he had this vision for innovation unit. He was friends with a former IT director from Virgin Atlantic, and they've got a really interesting story of how they ran an innovation unit. Now, they weren't a university, so Paul's expectations were significantly kind of affected by this story. We've been reeling them in ever since. He also knew someone at the post office, and we haven't had time to sort of, in today's slides, to go into what they've done, but they've also gone through an innovation process, which is quite interesting, so you can look that up. And also, if you know Paul or you work at Lancaster, he absolutely loves Gartner to bits. So anything that we did, I don't know if this is the same in many universities, but anything we did had to kind of borrow from the Gartner model. So Virgin Atlantic is a fairly interesting story. I've read quite a lot of Richard Branson's books. One of my favourite stories is when they worked out that it would cost you £30 to process any complaint if you complained on an airline. And so Richard Branson wrote to all the staff and said, if you can solve someone's complaint for less than £30, just get on with it, because we don't have to bother processing the complaint. And that's why if you go on a Virgin Atlantic flight and you have a little problem, they'll, you know, give you a free champagne or, you know, move your seat or something like that. They're also quite innovative in the way that they engage with users. So I remember tweeting them when I arrived in London early one day and saying, Virgin, you've got me there, you rock. And they replied and said, no, actually, we tilt, but we'll take the feedback. So that was quite nice. And I also remember another colleague that was travelling back from London on a very hot day, and the Virgin staff were all there giving out lollies as they got on the train because it was really hot. So they had done some quite interesting stuff. Now, it was kind of very different from a university. I think Paul's expectations were raised because they'd done all this amazing stuff. So they had 9,000 staff in total across the Virgin Atlantic business, but they didn't have that many IT staff, 100 IT, that's about the same as we've got at Lancaster. All of their IT development, everything, was completely outsourced. The only stuff they did in-house was a bit of project management and business partnering and supplier management and that kind of thing. So it was kind of different. But they'd had a lot of success. So there's some of the examples I've mentioned. They'd won a number of awards for innovation. Shown on the slide there is their innovation scorecard, which was from the British Travel Association. So they were rated very highly and won awards for things like the first class lounge. Their beds, has anyone been on the Virgin beds that sort of flatten out? That was from customer feedback, and they won some awards. Did they work? I could tell you a story about when I got upgraded to first class, because I took my director's ticket. But anyway. Okay, so we had this kind of broad idea that we were going to do some innovating, and our starting point was the definition that Virgin had used for innovation. So invention plus exploitation plus persistence. So the idea is that you can invent new things, but there's also existing systems and processes and ways of working that if you just look at it in a new way, you might be able to tweak or use differently. So it's not necessarily about coming up with brand new things. Exploitation is another key part. So one thing we've tried to focus on with the unit is actually delivering value. That's not always easy. We've had some things that have failed, and you could argue haven't delivered very much business value, but that's okay because failure is good. And persistence is extremely important. So you are going to meet challenge, people that say you're doing things that are bonkers, and in some cases you just have to keep going. Another example that Paul was very keen on was the Virgin Atlantic iPhone app. This was completely customer developed, and at the time it was the first kind of mobile app in the airline industry, and it was, all they did is they went to their social media, message on Facebook, hey, any developers out there, anyone that knows about building apps, come down to London, we'll put you up in a hotel for a weekend, and at the end of the day we'll have an app. And that's exactly what happened. So they actually say that the cost of developing that application was negligible, because it was just, catering costs and things like that, putting people up in hotels. And that had some innovative features. It did plane tracking before the days of Skyscanner and things like that. It had a Where's Richard feature that would show you wherever Richard Branson was in the globe, all these kind of things. And also they had a lot of success with mashing up internal data. So when I talk about reusing existing systems, as an airline they had data on which planes were where, which baggage was where, how much fuel they were using, but none of that data was brought together. So they had really good examples of mashing up data, producing operational dashboards and things like that. Slightly scary in the Virgin story was the number of projects that they worked on. So you remember Paul in the story? He was quite convinced that we'd managed to do 300 projects in our first year. That was quite a challenging piece of thinking. And they managed to develop quite a number in the unit. There was a few that they binned, and there was some that they kind of had a little burden of support. So all of this learning they applied, and they came up with a set of kind of golden rules for innovation. And so in the spirit of innovation, we nicked most of these. So there's some idea that you've got to have some sponsorship behind what you're doing. So they said every idea has a senior IT or senior line manager sponsoring it. There has to be some kind of clear benefit. It shouldn't be hugely mission critical. So they talked about not writing back to their production systems. And when you're dealing with aircraft, that's probably a fairly good idea. You're looking at things like short lifespans, a small amount of effort, low risk, and all of that kind of good stuff. So Paul was mad keen on this. He'd listened to the Virgin presentation, and he was like, right boys, we're going to build an innovation hub, we're going to do better than Virgin, and it's all going to be great. Oh, and by the way, I've got all this kind of Gartner model. So Gartner came in because they had this really good thing. Does people subscribe to Gartner? Know all the mod? Yeah. So Gartner had this this thing called two-speed IT, which they invented, and the rough theory behind two-speed IT was that however fast you try and go with your corporate systems and programming and things like that, you're never really going to go super fast because you've got these complicated systems that talk to each other. So that's going to go slow. But you can have bits of your IT organisation that are really quick and responsive and agile. That was the basic idea. But two-speed IT didn't go down too well, because if you were in the slow lane and the slow speed, it didn't help you feel very valued. So they renamed it and called it bimodal IT, but it's kind of the same idea. And so the idea here is that you've got this kind of mode 1 stuff that you're delivering all the time. It's the long haul, it's not very sexy, but you've got to do it. You've got to keep pace with technology, you've got to move. And you can see that's the more traditional approach. It's the waterfall model. It's, it's looking at being very careful with risk. you're looking at how much things cost and trying to eke performance out. And really, this isn't the area where innovation is going to go. You don't want to be innovating with your HR system. Probably not the best plan. But there's this other type of IT, which looks easy, but takes some skill, where the values are slightly different. So here you're looking at your brand, you're looking at the customer experience, you're using some of these tools, Kanban and agile, and so your delivery time comes down and you're looking at really short bursts of delivery, and that's the idea behind innovation. So we took Paul's Virgin model and we took some of the Gartner thinking and we tried to come up with a theoretical process of how we were going to innovate. And this is it. So all of our ideas really wide at the left-hand side. We'll go and have loads of ideas. We'll funnel them down, get them working, trial them, and then they'll all pop out at the other end as these wonderful new projects. In practice, it doesn't quite work like that. So you get a whole bunch of ideas, but lots of those ideas are pretty rubbish, so you end up binning them at the start. And then all through the process, as you try and select and initiate and run with those ideas, you keep failing. Some things pop out and you realise that they're more complicated than you thought, and you have to go and knock on the door of other parts of the IT organisation and say, you know, can you do these? And even sometimes when you get to the end, if you notice the little flower on the right-hand side, not quite as good as you might imagine. So that's probably our reality a little bit more, but Rob can come on to that. Okay, so this is the final slide, and then we'll check in with Tom and see if we've managed to completely stress him out yet. So Paul had these great ideas. He wanted an innovation hub, and so we spent an awful long time writing, guess what, the business case. Exactly. I'm afraid our attempts to innovate the business case process have failed. So we had quite a big ask. We asked for a couple of posts, and that's quite expensive. I actually asked for a 50k a year revenue budget, and that got knocked down to 15k. But we had to give them some benefits. So we talked about this idea of a very high throughput of projects. We linked it to the student experience, and we said, look, if you want to improve the student experience, what better way to do it than to do a load of fast, agile projects? We'll give you loads of benefit here. One of the problems we had is that they wanted to show what the return on investment is. And they came and said, well, how do you measure innovation? And we were a bit stumped. So we kind of threw them some measures about, you know, how fast we could turn an idea into a prototype and how many projects we could work on. And eventually, after several iterations of the business case, they kind of bought it and decided that we were going to go ahead. So we recruited Rob, who you'll meet in a moment, and Tom, who we're stressing out, and they were in place by about August, September this time last year, so we've been at it for about a year. Tom, how are you doing?
All right. We're doing car sharing.
So car sharing is the idea,
Yeah.
and he's coding it. He's 12 minutes in by my timing. That's good. Okay, so that's my kind of business bit out of the way. That's how we got to the very start of the Innovation Hub. And the really interesting stuff happened when we started innovating. Rob's going to tell you about that.
Hello, right, I'll tell you the truth now, and then we'll see how it goes. So, as Chris said, we started just under 12 months ago. We had a few aims, obviously, taken from the things that Chris has talked about there. And the first remit we had, really, was to improve the student experience. We wanted to try and narrow where the ideas came from, but actually even student experience is probably a little wide, as we'll come on to later. Everything that we do has a digital twist to it, although we do receive an awful lot of non-digital ideas as well, but we have a mechanism to pass those on. We have the ability to fail and really learn from that, so lots of our projects have sort of changed shape as they've gone, and we've realised that's not going to quite work. We encourage our students to be part of the project, so if a student comes forward with an idea, we actually ask them, do they have the skills to be involved, do they want to stay involved from a marketing point of view, from whatever discipline they're from. We also act as a unit to showcase new ideas and practices, so large parts of the university don't work in particularly agile methodologies, so we've started to sort of teach and consult on agile as well. And just basically a bit of an aim to allow students to embrace that anything is possible and their ideas are wanted and will be actioned on campus. So, a little bit about our culture. We operate as flexibly as possible, so we don't stick to any one rigid system. We try to avoid blocks, which in a university environment can be a bit more difficult. We are both from digital agencies, so our past is predominantly in the digital and web design sector, which has given us a bit of benefit in terms of agile methodology and getting through projects quite quickly. We try to think like a startup, which is quite a cheesy phrase, but we do, and we're always changing what we're doing. We try to challenge existing process, so a lot of the time we'll come up with a block where it's, oh, we don't do it like that, or you need to fill out these forms before we can go there, and we often try to challenge that and try and show new ways of working. And we work in a sort of agile project management method, although it is slightly twisted to whatever's happening that day. So, Cardboard Office. You've now seen the Google Cardboard that are on your tables. I've seen you all playing with them, so some of you might be slightly ahead of this. Does anyone have a particularly older Android phone? Because if you do, I need to go through a series of steps. But if you don't, you're fine. And unfortunately, this is a Google product as well, but they didn't quite make their phones able to do it. So on the sticker you'll see on the cardboard, if you visit that web address on your mobile phones, again, if you have the Android users, you may need to follow those instructions at the top. Oh, and for iPhones, if you could use Safari rather than Chrome. This is the danger of innovation. Some of you will get white screens, but hopefully all of you will see inside our office. And then once you've visited that web page, if you just put that inside your Google Cardboard so that the screen is facing you when you look through the cardboard, you should then be able to look around the inside of our office. Fingers crossed.
This is where the hotel Wi-Fi creaks.
We may have to come back to this moment. Buys Tom some time. And we now, yeah, I think we're now also killing Tom's internet. Has anyone successfully looked around our office yet? Raised hands. No, nobody. Oh, yeah, looking around. If you tilt it on landscape, should be a bit easier. Inside the cardboard, it's even better. It's very tidy. Yeah, I think we probably tidied it up before we did the footer. There we go. Everyone's starting to have a look around now. Just hold on to your phones carefully as well, because we don't want to be responsible for it flying out the cardboard. Oh, there's good noises now. It seems to be working. This was pretty much finished yesterday, so you can spin right round in a circle if you want to see the back. You will have to spin in a circle to see it fully. Everyone, it seems to be working. You can also keep your cardboards. If you want to try it later, you can. There's lots of Google Cardboard apps on the different app stores. Our gift to you. Right, I better crack on. I hope that worked for a few of you. If not, we'll try again at the end. But that's just an example of a very cheap way to do sort of virtual reality tours, just using a web browser. We do also have an Oculus Rift for a better demo, but there we go. Right, we'll crack on. So, I just wanted to quickly tell you, when we first started the unit, we were a little bit worried about would students actually get involved, would they be interested in what we're doing. And with very little effort, actually, giving students a platform, we're now seeing an average of about just under 3,000 people visit our site and platform every month. And they're actively voting up ideas and commenting on new ideas. The diagram you can just about see on the top is our sort of project flow. So whether at the beginning they're new ideas which students are voting on, then they move into investigating the viability stage, and then through a process which I'll come on to in a second, that allows us then to get to the end and launch the idea. So where do students put the ideas? We have a little idea system which is run on a platform called User Voice. Don't know if anyone's come across that before, but it's essentially an ideas and voting system. We can switch it on and off really easily for events. It can be used for information gathering and voting only, so you can pre-seed the idea. It really works nicely for multi-department collaboration, so if we do find a particular idea that belongs in facilities or in the Students' Union, we can easily pass it on to them to work with and engage with the students on. It's also co-signed and works with Facebook login as well, so there was very little barriers for our students to actually get involved. And I think when we first launched this, there was about 500 ideas in the platform. Just by giving students an area where they could put those things, we were fairly overwhelmed in terms of what they came forward with. Some were, can we have a slightly bigger Subway sandwich, but we quickly got rid of those. So what do we do when an idea comes in? We're currently on with a gamification project, which I'll touch on in a minute, but just to give you an idea of when that first came to us, we wondered why on earth anyone would want to do it. And that's in our gather ideas stage, which hopefully you can just about see in slightly blurry. Then we go through a bit of a process where we try to understand and refine that. So at that point we started to look what other gamification platforms existed, how they worked. And at that stage, if it's not for us, we do have the ability to pass it through to another area. We then look to choose the approach, which is down to Tom and team really, where they actually look at the technology involved, how long is it going to take, is it going to work. And then we pick an approach. And what I should say, sorry, is during the approach stage, a project like gamification where we think, oh, that's a really nice idea, but it's going to be really difficult. We actually have the ability to take it to a steering group, which is made up of a number of sort of academics, heads of departments, student union, actually say, look, do you think this is a good time investment? Is it going to be something that you think will benefit the university? And try and get a bit of guidance from outside parties, because every idea that comes in we love and then just want to get on with it, but there are some where realistically we have to take a bit of time. Then we get to the end where we actually review and launch the idea. It's at this point where it gets a bit sticky, because often we've created something quite quickly that nobody has the resource to manage. So then we have to decide whether we're going to manage it or throw the grenade out the door, as one of our colleagues recently said. And that then has the ability to go off into the sort of wider ISS management pool. So with these projects, once we actually choose it, we ask a question against every project, these questions against every project. So does it meet a need? Is it innovative? Is it sexy enough? Do we like it? Is it going to do something? Does it suit our project selection, which I'll mention in a moment? How likelihood are the blocks? So once we get further up into the university, are we going to hit barriers that we just can't do anything about? How quickly can we deliver it? And the OMG, why not factor, which is essentially when students come to us and go, can't believe you don't have this. Why? And why do you not have this on campus already? It's already in my college and my high school. And a good example of this was we recently installed Amazon lockers. I don't know if anyone's seen those, has those on campus, where essentially you can have your Amazon parcel delivered to a locker. Type in a code, door pops open and you pick up your parcel. And that came from lots of students saying, look, in my sixth form and college, that was already there. I can't believe you don't have one here. So we rang Amazon and said, can we have one of those? And they said yes. So our project categories. This is where the ping pong balls come from. So you can just about see the ping pongs there. Each ping pong ball represents a project. And each column represents a type of project. So we have our Nike projects, which are just do it. Dead easy, we'll just crack on, there's nobody going to tell us off, we'll just get on with it. There's the Tough Mudder projects, which as anyone knows is a quite extreme obstacle race. They're really hard, like the gamification project, but think they're going to be really worth it. We have our Bonkers projects, where one example that I'll come to later is someone said, could we strap a camera to a duck? Which we did try. And have really high PR opportunities, like our Minecraft project, which again, cover later on. And then what we just class as an event, so we do technology demos, and we do a lot of ideas generation events. So at this point, I'll quickly just take you through a few of our live projects. The Minecraft campus, I don't know if anyone has seen this already, because it has been out in the press and on Twitter and a few other things recently, but someone came to us, a student, a gaming student, surprisingly, and said, we'd really like it if the campus was in Minecraft. Me and Tom both looked at each other a bit oddly, because we'd never played Minecraft, never heard of Minecraft, didn't even know what Minecraft was. Looked at each other a bit blankly again, looked at the student, he looked at us, he was deadly serious. So then we thought, yeah, we'll give that a go. So at this point we went to the Gaming Society and said, does anyone here use Minecraft? Like 100 students put their hands up. And we said, good, here's some plans from facilities. We'd really like you to go and build the campus. So what we did, at this point we had no money, so we bribed them. gave them hundreds of packets of crisps and about 1,000 cans of Coke and locked them in a room, as you can see on this picture. And essentially our aim here is to be one of the first universities to get the entire campus accurately 2 meters, a meter per 2 blocks in Minecraft. It's completely student-led. They turn up once, twice a week, take the university plans and rebuild. We've recently engaged the local community, so we've had several high schools on campus actually being involved. And we're also using it for virtual tours, a little bit like you did with the Google Cardboard. We have an Oculus Rift and a few other bits that allow you to connect to the campus wherever you are in the world, and 2 students can walk through the campus together as if they were live. And that actually helps us link up with some of our international students as well, who perhaps haven't seen the campus. So I've just got a few slides, which hopefully you can see represent, the big one obviously is the Minecraft, and then the 2 smaller ones which are slightly blurry are the live purpose, so you should just be able to see. So that's Alexandra Square. If anyone's seen Lancaster, been to Lancaster, looks like that. The Spine, which is the main walkthrough at Lancaster, recreated that there as well. And pretty much the whole of the centre of campus is there. And you can actually go there, if anyone has Minecraft or plays it or even knows what it is, you can currently go to in-minecraft.lancaster.ac.uk and you'll be able to walk around. As I mentioned earlier, we got a lot of media love for this, which we thought no one would be interested in, but actually turned out everybody was interested in it, including local newspapers, the news, the breakfast news, radio, education magazines, Wired magazine were interested, and just a little bit of a show of what slightly crazy ideas can actually do. Okay, on to a slightly more serious and long-term project. This is the gamification project, which I mentioned had to go to our steering group for approval, really, because we thought it's really good, but it's going to take a while. Does anyone know what gamification is? Should I start again? So essentially gamification comes from computer games. So when you do a certain action in a computer game, you're awarded a badge. It's later moved into lots of apps, such as Audible and Twitter and all sorts of different things. So if you read a book at midnight like Chris, you get the Night Owl badge. And this came about because students said to us, I really understand what's going on with my education and when I'm in my lectures, but I don't really have any record of my day-to-day life at the university. So we have well, first of all, we investigated whether this can be done, and decided that rather than use another platform, we completely purpose-build it for our own university. And what we've done in the middle, the larger picture you can see, is a full documented API system that allows any of our departments with 2 lines of code to connect to the gamification platform and issue a badge. You can see on the left a little badge management, so anyone that issues a badge gets a little dashboard where they can revoke badges, add new badges, add collections. Lots of our badges are tiered, so if you earn 3 badges you get another badge. And the first people introducing this at the minute are the library, so they're looking at ways of managing how books are taken out. So if you take 5 books, you are awarded the bookworm badge, etc. It's going to be on our platform, on the Lancaster platform, so everything you do there will be recorded. Any badges that are more academic, you can send to LinkedIn for a full record. And it will be available on other platforms such as Moodle, so if there's certain badges where it's handed in coursework, that will appear in the right place. And what we've stated is that it's about changing behaviour, and that a badge must be achievable by anyone, although not everyone will achieve it. So as long as every person on campus could go for it, then the badge will be in the system. Slightly more sensible one, travel guides. This was a project where we wanted students who obviously travel or from different countries to be able to recommend places to go for other students. So completely student-led and student-managed. They can access with really simple Google API. They can say, right, well, I really like this location, you should visit. It's not really in the tourist guides. Have a look. And then other students can access that, a bit like the Lonely Planet guides, but aimed particularly at students. Recipes, really simple. Students said to us, look, it's really hard to find cheap and easy recipes. BBC is quite good, but other than that, it's hard to share them. So we created, within 24 hours, this project, and it's managed now by the Green Lancaster Initiative. Has really healthy, sustainable recipes led by students. So they can edit, it's like a Wikipedia, they can edit, comment, add new recipes, images, that kind of thing, and actually share healthy things to eat. A couple of slightly different ones now, which are particularly forum-based. So a lot of students came to us and said, I'm first year, I know third years have been through all the software problems that I'm having now. it'd be really good to be able to talk to them. So we built a peer help system, which essentially lists lots of various types of software that are used commonly across campus, and then students can interact there and actually help each other out on a particular software problem. And we also built Marketplace, which essentially allows, simple as it sounds, students to sell, swap, give away goods that they no longer need, whether there's a MIDI system there, old CD players, books, anything that they think they want to sell, move on. The Where Are They Now project, this is in conjunction with our alumni department. And this was more around, we had a sort of fairly large amount of second years come to us and say, look, I'm doing maths, I'm really a bit unsure why I'm doing it, I'm not sure where it's going to lead me. Is there any way for me to find out what my peers have done in the last few years? So using lots of alumni data, we actually map where all those students are around the world, and you can filter that by what industry have they gone into, what course did they do, salary bands, all sorts of different things that allow you then to see where your peers have ended up in the world under a particular subject. So that's our projects. Just a couple of very quick slides on our events that we've done. Technology days. These are always our best/worst ideas because it involves things that fly, break, and are quite expensive. So we basically have in our office several drones, Oculus Rifts, Leap Motion hand controllers, gesture control devices, and just allow students to access this technology that they normally wouldn't get a chance to use. Unless they're in an engineering department or things like that, they just won't go near it. So we basically put it all in a room, invite students to come and play with it and hope for the best. More recently, when a student put their hand inside the drone as it was flying, so it is quite a risky event. And we actually use that technology to generate ideas as well, so try and get people to think about this new technology and what we could do with it on campus. Impact LUMS, which is our management school. This is a bit of a pilot project to see how we could raise ideas, because what happens after a while is students get really excited that they can put all their ideas online, and then it slowly starts to dry up. And actually we get an awful lot of ideas now face-to-face and in these ideas generation. So we trialled this with the Marketing Society inside the management school and actually said to their students, what would you like to see inside the management school? So we got about 22 ideas, which there's only about 50, 60 active members in the Marketing Society. And then we invited them to pitch a 1-minute elevator pitch to a local agency called Fat Media, who came along, had a panel of their experts to actually listen to the ideas and then vote up for an eventual winner. And again, this was pretty much completely student-led by that team. We just supported it and helped them work out how they were going to do it, and then the idea has currently gone ahead. So this is Jolt the Library. This was after the pilot of Impact LUMS, a much bigger idea where we wanted to say to every student on campus, right, give us your ideas for the library. How would you improve the library service and what would you do? We had 130 plus ideas for this, of which we spent about 3 days shortlisting those down to 50 ideas, of which then 5 finalists were chosen. They then presented for about 10 minutes each on their idea and why it should go ahead, and that was to a panel of external judges. So we invited people from the council, from digital startups, and we're quite well connected in the sort of Manchester digital scene. So we invited a couple of guest speakers, an amazing lady called Michelle Hewer, who's a female tech entrepreneur, and she came down and actually mentored the students through their presentation. She recently was a finalist in the pitch competition, so she actually came down and gave lots of presentation tips to help them get through, and just had amazing feedback from this project really. And it's now become a campus-wide initiative, so we're soon to have Jolt the Campus. Not 100% sure that's going to happen, but current underway is Jolt the Spine, so students are able to put their ideas forward for that. So the slightly more interesting ones. What went wrong? Lots. The Digiboo. When I first started, met Chris, he then took me to see this big block, this big cube that looks like a photo booth, and said, I'm not really sure what to do with this now, so I thought I would hand it over to you. So me and Tom looked at it, wondered what we were going to do with it, and gave it a go. But essentially it was there to display updates on what was going on around campus. And our aim for it was to gather feedback. But all that happened was students thought it was a photo booth, went to try and take the photo, realised it wasn't a photo booth, and came back out again. The other problem with it, which Chris hadn't mentioned, that it was pretty much impossible to move. It was like the weight of a house. And the aim was that we'd move it round campus. It wasn't weatherproof. Every time we took it apart, something else broke. And essentially was a bit of a disaster, which we spent quite a lot of time on. Yeah, proper disaster, yeah. Me and Tom hated it. But we do have version 2 coming soon in a more digital format, something around the Google Cardboard or Oculus Rift Virtual Reality, where you'll be able to see an environment, leave feedback on it, that kind of thing. A mentor system. I think someone actually may have put this on Task Tom, or similar. Essentially, this was an idea to help two students connect, probably a first year or third year, and actually say, look, I'm struggling with a bit of this, can you help me? A sort of social and academic mentor system. It never really took off because there was an awful, when we mentioned that we might be trying to just throw this out there, there was a lot of concerns around security, privacy, linking two students together, how would they know who they were, where would we get the data from, lots of various problems. But there is the potential to be revisited if someone had a bit more time than we do generally, and a bit more resource to manage how that would actually work. Wi-Fi/duck-cam. So this is the idea I mentioned at the start, where someone said it'd be really good, we've got lots of ducks on campus, really green campus, why don't we strap a camera to the top of a duck's head, and then when it flies we can see where it's gone. It is actually possible. It's technically possible and technically legal. You do have to have a license from the Home Office, you do have to get a duck wrangler, and then there's also, the main problem actually was around the concerns of where's that duck going. Is it going in kitchens? Oh, we didn't want to know where it's going. So basically, we knocked that on the head, not literally. And then we're now looking at basically installing Wi-Fi, 360 Wi-Fi cameras on poles in the duck pond and various other areas. We've got chicken coops and all sorts, that students can actually control by taking part in a task. So they might have to tweet the Innovation Hub an idea before they gain control of the camera. So we're currently looking into that at the moment. Attendance monitoring. This is another really good idea, and is actually fairly straightforward technologically, bar anyone else's input. So our first idea, I don't know if anyone's seen beacon technology, iBeacons. So we bought a series of iBeacons. We were going to stick them in the lecture theatre, build it into Lancaster, our mobile app, and just allow students to tap it on their way in. Nice and simple, we thought. But when we discussed this with anyone outside of the Innovation Hub, it just went down like a giant lead balloon. So the Students' Union were against it, everyone was against it, and basically just lots and lots of worries about how we'd actually manage that process. At the moment, the mobile team in Lancaster are going to retake this back, are taking this back up, I believe. Is that fair? To see if it is actually possible. When we tried it a year ago, it was pretty much a no-no. Of course you can, yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Thankfully, it's not us doing it. So just a quick summary, really, just to try and highlight a few of the things that we've said, and if anyone's thinking of doing something similar. We'd say be prepared. The expectation of what's possible versus reality in this environment, obviously, like I said, me and Tom are predominantly from sort of corporate digital agency backgrounds, is very different. We have a lot of sort of, oh, you can't do that, we don't do that here, there's these forms to fill in, that kind of thing. So I think we were quite underprepared for how much resistance we'd meet. Number of blockers higher than expected, particularly around security. So we want to do lots of things with data and student access, that kind of thing. So that crops up a lot where we can't release that data. We can't. For instance, we wanted to do a really simple happy birthday notification in the app, but we weren't allowed to take the data of their birthday because they hadn't given us consent, etc. So then we would have to ask for their birthday, and lots of concerns like that. Lots of heavy processes already in existence and are really entrenched, so trying to switch anybody out of that is remarkably difficult. You'll need to have lots of patience. There have been moments where in a meeting where someone's gone, oh, I really think you should do this, we've gone away and done it, and they went, oh, I didn't mean now, and then they panicked, and then you sort of sit there, sigh a little bit and go, okay. Or just put it out there anyway and just blame Chris. You might be seen as a department that just makes things up. So a lot of people walk past our office, look in, shake their head a bit, carry on walking, never quite sure what we're doing, why we're building 150 cardboard glasses. And just prepare to get in trouble. we often get in a lot of trouble. When we release the alumni data without telling the alumni, they particularly weren't very happy. When we put the Amazon locker inside a library building and forgot to tell the library, they weren't very happy. When we put the Amazon locker in and facilities have been trying to do it for 12 months, we did it in 3 weeks, they were really unhappy. And just a notification to say that you will create PR opportunities and be ready. I don't think we were probably ready for our Minecraft exposure. It ended up taking literally about 2 weeks of time just to manage all the calls and what was going on with it. So. But it's possible. Most important thing to us, that anything's possible. And it's impossible to do it in an education environment. And if you give students a platform for these ideas, they will use it and they'll use it heavily. And I think, again, the management of that idea system was a bit of a surprise to us, actually looking after it and responding to students. And Gartner did warn us. They said, don't let it be the place that ideas go to die. And that is a strong possibility, because the amount of ideas that come in, then managing those and responding to students and letting them know that you do care and that idea is genuine is quite difficult. Me and Tom struggled with this one. Chris probably hammered it into us the most. Well, we needed to learn that not everything would be perfect. So when we first started this, we over-designed, over-engineered absolutely everything, because we were from an agency where the customer was looking at it and we wanted it to be bob on. Now, like we do now, Tom's typing in 45 minutes as fast as he can. We're more willing to learn that not everything will be fine when we send it out. And you'll need very forward-thinking senior support and sponsors. So obviously we're turning up at meetings saying, can we strap a camera to a duck? We need people that are actually going to think, oh, these boys are being serious. And actually help us find a way of getting that past people that are needed to get past. Just a few final tips before we check in with a rather panicked-looking Tom. Really important, we'd say, to create a varied steering group or an advisory board from early on, rather than just a very closed digital board. So we invite people from the student union, heads of department, lots of academic people to say, look, here's some of the crazy ideas we're up to, what do you think? And invite context from enterprise and creative industries for an outside perspective, really, because a lot of the things that we do that are seen as maybe a bit crazy actually may have already been done outside, are perfectly normal in a different world. And delve into new technology as early as possible. So we got our Oculus Rift straight away, had no idea what we were going to do with it, we just tried to work out interesting projects, and now our VR and virtual reality projects are starting to take off, but we never would have known if we hadn't just tried it out. And be slightly flexible with the purpose of the unit. So we now do a lot of work with sort of student enterprise as well, entrepreneurs, technology startups who come to us for a bit of advice, a bit of space, just to give them a bit of guidance. And have a process, but don't be too rigid with it. So like I said, we started off with how on earth we're going to manage all these projects, and slowly but surely that's become 0 forms, just a bit of a chat. Can we do it? I think comes to the end, / task Tom. So Tom is now typing really, really fast because he knows I'm about to ask him.
Right, come on, Tom, you've had 42 minutes and 30 seconds to develop your solution. It's up and plug it in and see what it does. And maybe while you're explaining it, we could also take some questions because we're running out of time a bit. Cool. So you do questions and we'll get Tom plugged in and see what he's managed in 45 minutes on his... What app was it? Car sharing app.
Any questions?
I knew it'd be Gareth having his question. He was inspirational in his presentation last year, you see. I've taken a lot of... Right.
Thank you. So Gareth Edwards, University, sorry. Yeah, subject close to my heart. I've just been looking at your website. The NAP pods, how are they coming along?
The NAP pods are another disaster because you've got to buy them, procure them, write a business case, put them in the library. In fact, we really, really wanted to do that. We had the funding. We could have just gone and bought them and put them in. But because of all the red tape, other universities started doing it first. So I think, was it... Might be yours, Manchester. I think it went on BBC News, someone's put the NAP pods in and we were like, oh, flipping it. Foils again.
Steal this whilst you're asking.
Yeah, Manchester thought it would be a good idea to put sleeping pods in the library. Chris, I've got a question.
Yeah.
What has been the most favourite output in the last 12 months from your...
I think my favourite thing was when we ran the event for schools and we had top-level primary and first-year secondary schools in, and just to see the look on their faces when we got them in and said, right, today, guys, you are going to be building the campus in Minecraft. Here's some plans, get going. And they absolutely loved it. And we never really imagined that would happen. The teachers loved it. We had a school that said, please can we send our entire year group of 120 people? And we were like, well, we can't really accommodate that. But we never imagined that it would be that successful. So that was my favourite one, I think.
Any other questions? stunned silence. Oh no, here we go.
Hi there. So when you've delivered this amazing, innovative new service, everyone's loving it, and then it goes slightly wrong, what's the support arrangements that you've got set up for those services? Do you integrate with the service desk and, you know, everyone knows how to do the basic triaging, or does it just come straight to you guys?
Don't worry about that. No. Do worry about that. So remember when I said the business case before?
Yeah.
One of the things that we committed to do in that case was that anything that we produced had to be supported in the unit for at least 6 months after it had been delivered. So that means that once all the code's been cut and it's working, we've got to support it for a bit. And during that time, we try and go and talk to other members of the university, we've got quite a good plug into the senior leadership team. We say, look, we've created this gamification system, now you're going to have to support it. And they don't like it, but at least you've got a buffer of time to kind of get them used to and warm the idea. The other thing we did is we got people from internally in the IT department and got them to come and work with us on the projects, so they were actually cutting code, which meant by the time we handed it over, they kind of knew what the code was like. Tom, do you want to just show us your car share thing? Right, otherwise, okay. It'll have been 45 minutes.
Okay, so far, I've basically got a little website that would let a user come on and see what other people are currently listing as being able to car share. They can, and we've got the sort of process in to get people starting to sign up. So if I click on this, I can add someone new. Bob. He's got a rating of 3. Obviously, he wouldn't create his own rating, but you create. So close. Then you get to the page where you do the cars and so on.
I think we should give him a round of applause for building anything in 45 minutes. It's worth noting that when I pitched the idea of doing something in 45 minutes, he wasn't that keen. Right.
Oh, Evan's. Excellent.
Oh, we got one more question.
Oh, one more question.
Sorry, it was just a follow-on question from the last one about chucking things over the fence to support. Has that had a knock-on effect in terms of resourcing, in terms of, have you looked at what that means in terms of tickets to service desk? Has your senior team considered the impact of all of that, given that we're a support services group?
Yeah. Well, we've not really sort of formally looked at it in terms of reporting tickets and bits and pieces, but we do have some. It's got a lot of backing from the senior team, and obviously because it was Paul in the story, it was his baby. He's quite keen on it. To be honest, lots of ideas that we've developed don't really need a huge bunch of support. So like all the peer support software stuff doesn't need any. The Minecraft server just runs, and the Gaming Society have admin access to the Minecraft server, so they can fix it. So loads of ideas. The students themselves support it. I think it's going to be the things like gamification when they come across the line. They're going to be a bit more problematic. But I like buying the director of CAS a beer now and again, so I'm hopeful that it's not going to cause too much impact. We'll see in another year. Well, I also look after the service desk, you see, so that I can tell them to get on with it. Not beers, but I did buy them all a round of ice creams the other week when it was hot.
So in other words, you can break the rules because you manage the innovation and the service desk.
Yeah, and also I think you also need a kind of mindset that you don't mind breaking the rules.
Well, rules are there to be broken, aren't they? Let's be honest.
Exactly. Happy days.
That's what doctors are for. To fix broken people. We've got to keep doctors in work.
Thank you.